This meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 100. Oh.
Go ahead.
Welcome to meeting number 145 of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure, and Communities. Before we begin the meeting, I want to remind all in-person participants to read the best practices guidelines and the cards on the table. These measures are in place to protect the health and safety of all of our participants. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, December 5th, 2024, the committee is commencing its study on Air Canada's plan to impose carry-on baggage fees and carry-on baggage fees in the air transport sector. All witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of today's meeting. Colleagues, appearing before us for the first half of our meeting, we have from Porter Airlines, Mr. Michael Deluce, Chief Executive Officer by video conference. Welcome to you. We have from Air Transat Incorporated, Annick Guérard, President and Chief Executive Officer by video conference. Welcome to you. And from WestJet Airlines, we have Mr. Alexis van Hoensbroek, Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to you, sir. As well as Mr. Andrew Gibbons, Vice President, External Affairs. Welcome back to you. We'll begin our opening remarks, and for that, I will turn it over to our guests who are joining us here in person today. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Alexis van Hoensbroek, and I'm CEO of the WestJet Group, and I'm joined by Andy Gibbons, our VP for External Affairs. We all share the same ambition, which is providing affordable air travel options to Canadians. Unbundling our product and making parts of our services optional allows us to offer the lowest possible price to those who need it and who want it. We are happy to discuss the specifics of this and receive feedback. At the same time, there's strong evidence that a thriving low-fare environment, such as people experience it in other regions of the world, can only be achieved if the government takes serious actions to reform this sector. And it is time for government to bring down mandatory fees and charges that passengers have to shoulder on top of their airfare to a level that is more in line with other similar countries. WestJet's track record is unrivaled. WestJet is the company that democratized air travel in Canada. In our 28 years of serving Canadians, WestJet has cut airfares in half. I suspect one would struggle to name many industries that have improved affordability so dramatically and so consistently. Unfortunately, over the same period of time, government and third-party fees and taxes have gone up by 2/3. Our latest affordability effort, the Ultra Basic Fare, launched this past June to provide Canadian travelers with even more affordable options. Ultra Basic is a brand new fare, offering Canadians an average of 14% savings compared to previous fares to those traveling with just a personal item like a backpack. While this product was criticized by some, the facts show that it has achieved strong results for customers, our operations, and the country. This is not hypothetical. It is data reflecting consumer choice. Here are some quick facts around Ultra Basics. In just 6 months, over 2.5 million guests have chosen this fare. The reduced airfare has saved Canadians as much as $48 million. And according to our guest service, travelers are satisfied with this new option as they are with all our other fare products. Our Ultra Basic Fare has also positively impacted our efficiency and performance, which I know has been a topic of interest for this committee. The 1.2 million avoided carry-on bags have reduced bug-out delays which occur when there are more bags than there is overhead bin space on a flight. Between this past August and November, we have seen a 54% reduction in delay minutes and a 67% reduction in flights impacted, meaning more Canadians are getting where they want to go on time. WestJet prides itself on being transparent about the cost of our tickets. Unbundling our tickets is about providing the most affordable option for those who choose it and not about creating new fares. Our fares are optional and transparent. Government and third-party fees are not. Before Canadians even buy their ticket, government and third-party taxes, fees, and charges can add up as much as $99 to a ticket price. This is more than 3 times of that it is in the United States, where similar charges are around $28. And the Canadian charges, fees, and taxes go only in one direction, up. These fees are part of Canada's out-of-date user-paid model for aviation infrastructure, where passengers pay more than the services they receive, with a portion of the ticket cost going directly into financial budgets, federal budgets. Moreover, there's little transparency or oversight regarding how these fares are determined or utilized. These sky-high fees are truly the main hurdle to competition in Canada. We have all seen many new airlines come and go in Canada, with Lynx Airlines recently publicly linking their demise to the incredibly high government and third-party fees and charges. WestJet believes the priority area that needs reform and scrutiny is the high cost and burden of these third-party and government fees to the public. They are unfair, hurt our ability to compete, and negatively impact Canadian wallets. Ultimately, these fees prevent millions of low-income Canadians from using air travel in a country that is so big that there's often no other option to travel but by air. In closing, Canada has a robust air travel market, but we can work together to make it better. Canada's outdated user pay model requires comprehensive review and reform. Many countries around the world provide air service and infrastructure at a higher quality and much lower cost. These should serve as a blueprint for a modern and more affordable Canadian air travel sector. And until such review is completed, Canadian regulators should refrain from introducing any additional financial burden to the sector that will further negatively impact ticket prices for Canadians. Thank you again for having us here today. We welcome your questions and look forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much, sir. Prochainement, nous avons Madame Guérard.
Next, we have Ms. Guérard. You have the floor, Ms. Guérard. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members.
Air Transat a souligné.
This year, Air Transat celebrated its 37th anniversary. Founded and based in Montreal, Air Transat carries more than 5 million passengers annually to nearly 60 international destinations in 28 countries, mainly in Europe, North Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. We are guided by strong, people-focused corporate values. Our customers and employees are at the heart of all our decisions. Air Transat's presence ensures healthy competition in the Canadian airline industry and competitive pricing in the markets we serve. We are committed to working with the government and members of Parliament to protect competition and ensure that Canadian travelers have choices. This committee has already been made aware that Air Transat, previously debt-free, is now facing financial challenges related to the impact of the pandemic. This is due to 2 years of suspended or limited operations as a result of travel restrictions. We are faced with high debt levels, which limit our ability to compete and grow. We take note of Air Canada's announcement last week and the fact that since that announcement, all our Canadian competitors have been applying some form of cabin baggage restriction or charge applicable to certain passengers in certain markets. The use of ancillary fees for optional services such as baggage, seat selection, and other options is common practice in Canada and on many international airlines. We feel it is timely to use this forum to highlight the excessive and ever-increasing fees, taxes, and regulatory burden that place the entire Canadian air transport system at a competitive disadvantage. In recent years, we've seen a significant increase in external fees and charges under Canada's so-called user pays model. For example, the Air Traveller Security Charge recently increased by 33%, CATSA. Air navigation charges have increased by almost 30% in 2023 and are set to rise again in 2025. Canada's major airports currently pay approximately 12% of their gross revenues in rent for Crown land, plus other payments in lieu of property taxes. Airports are making major investments in infrastructure, and passengers are paying ever-increasing airport improvement fees, which are almost 6 times higher than those charged to American consumers. The regulatory burden is also significant for travelers. The new requirements of the Air Passenger Protection Regulations, introduced in 2019 and amended in 2022, have also added to the bill for the air transport system. Other regulatory proposals from the Canadian Transportation Agency are currently under review and would add considerable costs to this system. Canada's air transportation system is essential. Canadian consumers and travelers are telling us that they can no longer afford the constant cost increases we have to add to the price of an airline ticket. And an airline like Air Transit, which does not dominate the market, is clearly no longer in a position to pass on these increases to its customers. At a time when the pressure is great and airlines are withdrawing from certain markets, Air Transit's presence enables Canadians to benefit from a broader offer of services and to make choices according to their needs and budget. It is with this approach that we are continually strengthening our network. We have a joint venture agreement with Porter Airlines, under which we offer Canadians simple, transparent, and affordable domestic and international travel options. We combine Porter's domestic and North American network with Air Transit's expanding international network. This commercial agreement is excellent news for travelers and for competition between airlines in Canada, as it enables us to offer additional services from a growing number of cities. In addition, I would like to reiterate our commitment to playing a competitive and innovative role, as well as our willingness to continue working with the government and Parliament to promote the interests of the traveling public and our 5,000 employees. Thank you for your support.
Merci à vous, Madame Guérard.
Thank you to you, Ms. Guérard.
Porter Airlines, Mr. Deluce, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to speak on behalf of Porter Airlines. Porter has transformed within the last 2 years to become an airline serving more than 36 markets across North America, as well as points around the world through various airline partnerships, including our joint venture with Air Transat. We now operate in every province and are a genuine third option for Canadian air travelers, with over 10% of seats in the domestic market. This number is growing rapidly as our fleet of new Embraer E195, E2 aircraft is planned to more than double to 100 in the coming years. Our focus is on providing an enjoyable experience for economy passengers by offering more value to these travelers than any other airline, through features such as complimentary beverages, including beer and wine served in glassware, premium snacks, free Wi-Fi, and earning 100% loyalty points regardless of the fare you purchase. Economy passengers are diverse, ranging from day trippers to students on a budget, to those looking for a premium all-inclusive experience. Economy travelers have various needs, and we cater to everyone, including people who value the option of a basic fare. We introduced basic fares in 2018. Today, we have 6 types of economy fares with varying benefits, and basic is the second most popular fare we offer based on the number of seats sold. Basic economy fares have made air travel more accessible for Canadians and an affordable option for millions of passengers globally, allowing airlines to introduce competition on a scale never seen before. In North America, every airline of note offers a version of basic fares, from ultra-low-cost carriers to global network carriers. Only about 8% of basic fare passengers elect to upgrade their ticket to include a standard carry-on bag to go along with their personal item. This amounts to less than 2% of Porter's total customers. Our basic fare clearly provides a benefit to consumers who do not intend to bring a carry-on bag to save on their base fare. We make every effort to clearly identify what's included and what's not in every fare type through the purchase process. To ensure passengers are well informed about the features of their selected fare, there are multiple prompts highlighting this prior to the customer confirming their purchase. It's clear that more Canadians are flying because of basic fares, with a significant majority preferring the value of this option provides and understanding what it includes. For those with a preference to have other services as part of their ticket, we have even more options for them. Through the introduction of new routes that keep prices low and our commitment to elevated economy air service, Porter has set a new standard in the Canadian airline industry. This is driving positive change for all Canadians through healthy airline competition. Thank you for the opportunity to make this submission. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deleuze. Colleagues, we'll begin our line of questioning today with Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. My questions will be for WestJet, Mr. von Hunschbroek, if I somewhat close to that. So just want to start out with, I understand the argument of the industry with respect to unbundling, and that for passengers who don't want the full, I think you used the example in the media, the full Happy Meal or the full value meal, that they might just want French fries or a hamburger. Now, the obvious question, though, is if you unbundle, then it should be at a reduced cost. Since you've brought out your ultra basic fare, how much cheaper is an ultra basic fare versus a basic fare?
Yeah, so I see it in the exact same way as you do. And I think that's probably also the main misunderstanding in the public space. We have actually reduced our average fare for ultra basic by 14% over what it was before when it was a normal basic fare. So there's a substantial reduction in price. And over the last 6 months, this has actually accumulated to 48 million of savings collectively for all those that used and that booked this fare. So this is a considerable saving.
Thank you very much. I find sometimes that when we talk in generalities that we lose some of the point. And so I want to take a little bit of a different approach and actually go through a fare with you. This is an actual fare that was purchased to fly from Winnipeg to Victoria on WestJet, obviously in December. And so the base fare starts at $197. I think most would agree that's a reasonable price. But after we go through all the add-ons, we're up to $274. So if you would be good enough, I'd like to actually go through each one of these additional fees and maybe have you explain what they are and who they go to. So the first one I have is $30 for YQI in brackets other transportation charges. Could you explain what that is and who benefits from that charge?
Yes, for sure. So first of all, we differentiate between those charges that we charge as an airline that goes straight into the airline, and this is what we call air transportation charges, and that includes the base fare and this YQI surcharge that you are mentioning, and then the others are third-party charges that come on top of it. So why do we have a YQI surcharge? Because they are actually infrastructure costs that are embedded in our base fare. So, for instance, navigation charges, that's domestic charge, I think $15 per passenger. That's part of what the airline has to pay, and that's not a flow through that goes through the other taxes and fees. So this is reflected in there, and the same is also true for the aeronautical charges that we pay to airports. So it's basically a reflection of infrastructure costs that are paid by the airline and not paid through the tax box of the passenger.
So just to simplify a little bit, how much of that $30 on average would WestJet keep, and how much would flow through to NAV Canada and other government?
It all flows through.
All flows through. Thank you. And the next up is GST. I think we know what that is for $11.82. And then the next is the $9.46 charge for air traveler security charge. I know what that is, but perhaps you could share with the Canadians what that is.
Yeah, so that's money that's being paid for the security screening. However, this money doesn't go to CATSA that performs the security screening. It actually goes into the federal budget that then pays CATSA. And we assume, and we have strong belief to assume, that our passengers are actually overpaying for security charges. And the $9, that's the domestic charge. It actually goes up to I think it's somewhere in the mid-20s for international flights, although the process is the exact same thing. And this charge was just hiked by 33%. And at least as far as I could see it, I didn't see 33% additional agents doing screening. So it's just a straight price increase for Canadians.
Thank you for that. And the next is $25 for airport improvement fee.
Yeah. That's a charge that's being charged by the airports directly to the passenger on top of what the airports charge directly to the airline that's covered in the prior fare fee that I mentioned. Now, if this must have been a flight from Victoria to Winnipeg and not the other way around, because Winnipeg actually charges $45 AIF. So this is actually at the low end what we have been showing.
And then the final charge is GST on the airport improvement fee, so a government tax on a government fee. Okay, I'm just going, so another embedded cost, another government embedded, in addition to whatever corporate taxes and otherwise that WestJet might pay, is the carbon tax. Does WestJet pay carbon tax, and if so, how much?
Absolutely, we pay carbon tax, and that's again embedded in the airfare that we charge. So it's first collected by the airline, and then we pay it on. And it's only charged for intra-provincial flights, so only on a Calgary to Edmonton flight. So that has been.
I think that's an important point to highlight. So because the carbon tax is supposed to be there to make you select choices that reduces your carbon footprint. But the way that it works in the aviation space is that if I fly from Toronto to Vancouver, I'm not paying carbon tax, or the airline's not paying carbon tax, whichever you want to slice it. But if I fly a shorter flight from Toronto to Ottawa, then I do have to pay. You do have to pay carbon tax.
That is correct, and the amount has been 10 million in 2024. I want to highlight in that context that there are lots of additional carbon reduction costs coming into this sector, and by 2028 we will be paying far north of 100 million on all of these things. By the way, half of it just coming from British Columbia.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, just a reminder, I'm going to be quite firm with the time today because I know everybody wants to get their questions in. If you see the yellow card, it's a 30-second reminder. If you see the red card, it means that I will be cutting you off. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation. Next, we will go to Mr. Badaway. Mr. Badaway, you have the floor. 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. I guess my first question is to WestJet. How does WestJet's approach to baggage fees compare to other carriers throughout Canada?
So I believe our approach is very, very similar. So there's a baggage fee that. So first of all, many people can have a carry-on can have a checked bag for free. So if you buy a higher fare type, or if you're a loyalty member, or if you have a credit card from WestJet, you actually get your first bag, or sometimes more, that you can check for free. And then the price is actually very transparent. You can look it up on our website. And the price differs from when you pay it. So if you buy it at booking, you pay the least. And if you buy it at the airport, basically when you show up, then it is more, because obviously we want this transaction to happen early in the process, so we give an incentive to do this early.
In the last quarter, since implementing these fees, what have your revenues been?
So we are a private company, so we don't disclose specific revenue numbers. But let me make a broader point, which is if you look around the industry, you will find that almost all airlines actually make more revenues on optional fees than they make a profit, which means in turn that airlines subsidize their base fare through optional fees, which is good because it actually allows airlines to offer lower fares to those that select lower fares and don't select an optional fee, compared to what airlines would be able to do if they were not be able to get those fees. Because if it would be all the same price, it would be higher for everyone.
Now, you made some comments earlier about the fees that you're charged from the government, fees that you're charged from airports, fees that you're charged from security. Being in business myself for many years, one of the things I try to do, both with my customers as well as my suppliers and others that I'm in partnership with, to make sure that our company not only runs smoothly for us, but more importantly, runs smoothly for the people that we serve. With that said, and to enter into that true partnership, one of the things that this committee has previously asked for was for you to disclose your finances. Now, I understand you are a private company and you do have that choice, and of course, to date, it's been not good. No, it's been the answer. However, I go back to my earlier comment. One of the things that I would be very interested in is seeing what that gross, that net is, taking into consideration the other side of the balance sheet when it comes to the fact of the expenses that you do have, some of which you've mentioned today, and to see what areas that we as a government can actually look at to partner with you to mitigate those affordability issues. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. That's why we're here right now. We're here based on affordability for the passengers. So I'll ask the question again, and this is with I'll use the word sincere intent to, as a government, look at the possibilities that may lie ahead of us with respect to affordability, that we can work together towards affordability for the customer, the passenger. So I'll ask again, is there an opportunity for us to sit down, have you disclose your finances, and we can look at exactly what areas we can work on?
So first of all, we are always happy to sit down and also talk about specific numbers. I've no problems about that as long as it's in a closed room. However, I want to say what I already said in my introductory remarks. If we really care about affordability in Canada, the main hurdle, and it has been said by all the others as well, are the sky-high and off-the-chart high fees and charges that government-controlled entities charge airlines. And this is far beyond what you see in other countries. It basically, if it's $100 per ticket, basically means that if you are entering the market as a new entrant and you want to price break by offering double-digit ticket end price, you basically subsidize your tickets until you're bankrupt. And the graveyard of passed away airlines in Canada is really big, and just 2 airlines were just added this year alone. And that's the reality, and that's the challenge that makes it very difficult to offer those low fares that Canadians would need, because this is a country where air travel is essential.
That's the whole purpose of this dialogue. At the end of the day, sir, these costs will land somewhere. Either it's going to be a subsidy by Canadians, or it's a user pay system paid by you. So the cost has to land somewhere. Hence the reason for my earlier comments and my questions and my desire to sit down, look at your balance sheets and see exactly where you're standing with respect to your margins, what you're making, what you can absorb, most importantly, to then therefore mitigate the challenge for you, then therefore your customers, but more importantly, is to mitigate the subsidies that would otherwise land on Canadians to then put more money in your pocket. And that's what's key here. Yes. So we want, I want to see that.
Yeah.
You're making a lot of claims here, but I want to see how credible those claims are by looking at the numbers on your balance sheet.
I'm more than happy to discuss all those details. That's no problem at all. But what I want to say, the user pay model needs a reform for sure, because the user pay plus model, users pay in excess of the infrastructure that they use. And this, by the way, in a sharp contrast to how you deal with other modes of transportation. Rail receives billions of subsidies, although only a tiny fraction of Canadian uses it. If we were to receive, just as a thought experiment, if we were to receive the same per passenger subsidy as Via Rail gets, we could not just let everyone fly for free, we could even hand them out cash as they enter the airplane. That's the reality in this country.
That here again is affordability, and we want to make sure that the affordability lands on the people that it should land on. We don't need to have Canadians subsidizing, put money in your pocket, but affordability for the customers that actually fly in your planes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Badaway. Prochainement, nous avons Mr. Barsalou-Duval. À vous la parole.
Next, we have Mr. Barsalou-Duval. You have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll start my questions with Air Transit. Welcome to all of the witnesses. It's great to have the explanations that you've given about the Cs that we've seen recently and added in recent years in air transportation. Ms. Guérard, you are one of the only air carriers that does not charge for cabin baggage. And I would like to know, at Air Transit, how was that decision made? Do you intend to continue this? And I'll ask 3 questions in one. But I'm particularly interested in the third question. What percentage of your clients don't take cabin baggage? First of all, we've taken note of the announcement by Air Canada and the fact that all of our Canadian competitors are applying a type of user fee for cabin baggage applicable to passengers in some markets. And now, for competition reasons, we can't necessarily announce our commercial intentions. We have a number of streams of ticket, 5 to give the most choice to our travelers, but in all of them, cabin baggage is included in all classes. The percentage of people, well, we don't have the same network as others, so we can't really compare ourselves to WestJet or Porter. We have an international network. So depending on the routes, on long-haul trips, people, of course, have cabin baggage more frequently on shorter routes. And then some people just have a backpack, or I understand that you don't have any specific numbers necessarily at hand in Audible, but in the media, some commentators or experts have advanced that 90% of people who travel with cabin baggage. Is that something that sounds correct on your end? It really depends on our routes, on long-haul routes between Canada and Europe. Nearly 50% of people have checked baggage in the cargo, and 50% have cabin baggage, and that varies depending on the destination. Thank you very much. And now a question for WestJet. We learned that not only do the infamous new $35 fees charged by Air Canada for cabin baggage, not only will they be charged each way, but in addition to that, it won't even be in the cabin, it will be in the cargo. The cargo hold. Is there a possibility to have cabin baggage, or is it sent into the cargo hold?
Really cannot speak to what competitors offer, so actually I don't know. But I can speak to what we offer, and our ultra basic fare foresees that if you buy an ultra basic fare, you cannot bring a large carry-on bag into the cabin. So if you have a large carry-on bag, you have to check it in, and then it goes down into the cargo hold.
Je comprends, mais
I understand, but a cabin baggage that follows the specifications. It stays in the cabin, or it goes into the cargo hold if they pay for a cabin baggage.
So ultra basic customers cannot pay for a cabin baggage. So they can bring their small cabin baggage, but if they have a large one, it can only go into the cargo hold. Because part of it is also that, again, it's a choice. Everyone who buys this fare knows this. So this is not a surprise. This is something that someone deliberately chooses. And we see that, so we had 1.2 million Canadians that bought an ultra basic fare and did not bring a bag for the overhead bin, and did also not check a bag. Yeah? So that's a real saving. But if they do show up with a bag, it has to go into the cargo hold.
I don't know how much time I have left. Perhaps it's a language issue, but I'm not sure I understood the answer. The reason why I'm asking my question is because there's a lot of people who are deciding to have cabin baggage because they're worried that their baggage will be lost if it's in the cargo hold. So if all air carriers are saying, well, we're forcing consumers to put their bags in the cargo hold, when at the end of the day, they're already worried about losing their bags. What we're doing is that we're forcing consumers to lose their bags, and we should be doing the opposite, should we not?
Yeah, but there's not enough space in the passenger cabin for all the bags that people will potentially want to bring. So they have to go into the cargo bay, and that's just the case. And if a passenger really wants to bring a carry-on bag, a big one, then they can buy a different fare class. Again, it's all down to choice.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Barsalou.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barsalou Duval.
Dance, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, please.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank everybody for coming today. Your responses really help us as members of parliament be able to talk to our constituents and keep them informed. So I'm going to go back to the basic fares we discussed, and I think there was some talks about the number of people that actually travel with no baggage, no carry-on. Your number could from WestJet. Could you just give me that number again?
So far, since we introduced it, it was 1.2 million that did not check a bag, not bring a carry-on bag, and bought an ultra basic fare, and collectively saved more than 20 million.
Yeah, perfect. And so and Air Transat had a number that was about 50% that you said that travel with no baggage.
Nope. No. I'm just saying that depending on the routes, people will travel with different baggage patterns, which is totally normal. So since we operate mostly long-haul flights, people will half of the time bring a carry-on, half of the time will register their baggage in cargo.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And then Porter, have you had a chance to give a number on how many people fly without carry-ons?
So I provided a number that of people who purchase basic fares with Porter, 8% bring a carry-on bag.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand here when you're talking about what that actually looks like, because the way I see it is more and more people will end up buying the basic amount or the baseline, whatever the baseline is for each. I know everybody's kind of got a different name, but then are going to be paying for those add-ons. So I'm wondering, what does that look like when we pay the base amount and then start adding in the cost for carry-on, the cost for checked bags, cost for seat selection? Does it end up costing travelers more once we start adding all those fees on?
So it's a bit like when you buy a meal at McDonald's. Yeah? So if you buy a cheeseburger and fries and Coke separately, it's going to cost more than if you buy all the three of it as a value fare. And it's the same here. If you buy an ultra basic and then you add everything you could potentially add, it will cost more than if you just upsell to the next higher fare class, which is an economy fare. And that's what many do. If they want to bring this, then they buy the economy fare and they got it all as part of it.
So I guess my concern then is going to be about, you told us that a lot of airlines are making money on add-ons. So if that's the way you're making the vast majority of your money is on these add-ons, then isn't that just encouraging airlines to just create more add-ons so that passengers end up paying more in the long run?
Well, if airlines wouldn't receive revenues in optional add-ons, they would have to raise their base fare, which would be mandatory for all passengers. So that's, again, it's all about choice. We want to offer the lowest price to those that care about the lowest price, and we offer a higher service set at a higher price for those that can afford it. And that's the right thing to do. You want those people who are ready and willing to pay more to subsidize those that can afford the least. By the way, that's exactly what you do in your tax system. You tax those that can afford it more than those that cannot afford it. And that's the right thing to do. And that's exactly what we are doing as an airline.
Okay. And I guess, so you also, again, I'm going back to WestJet, and unfortunately, just because he provided some stuff like, talk about getting rid of the user pay model. Who ends up paying for the fees, like security screening and any of those things? And as a taxpayer, where does that money come from?
So I didn't say to get rid of the user pay model. I said reform it. So I worked in Europe for many, many years, and Europe also has a user pay system. But interestingly, the fee per passenger is about half of what it is in Canada, and the infrastructure is better. So I think there's a good point to think about how this entire sector is being governed, because the way it's being governed actually has created a sky-high cost structure at a below-average infrastructure. And that's a problem. And I'm not saying this for any other reason than because I believe that there is a great opportunity to improve air travel for Canadians, to have better infrastructure and better service, and have at least a portion of the market that receives lower ticket prices.
So if I had to ask today, what would be the one thing that we have to change as a government, or one thing the government has to change that would lower these fees for the average Canadian?
So we have made a few policy proposals, and the first one is the government should stop collecting airport rents from the airports. They pay almost $500 million in airport rents. The airports should keep this money to either lower the airport improvement fees or repair the debt or invest into infrastructure, but not fund the federal budget. That's number one. Number two is the government should do a proper review of how to properly set up a user pay system, or potentially even, like in the US, a partly taxpayer-supported system. So that's a choice for the government. Either way is good, but either way will be better than what we have. And the third thing is, until such a review is being completed, there should be no additional financial burden added to the sector, because every burden that's being added to the sector will end up in the ticket price.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dance. Next, we'll go to Mr. Viss. Mr. Viss, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be directing my questions to WestJet to begin. I will note, I'll give an example about the sky-high user fees and charges. I parked my car at the Vancouver airport on December 8th, and I picked it up on December 12th at the parkade adjacent to the departures area. The Vancouver Airport Authority charged me $325 to park my car. They doubled those costs without telling anyone. Normally, I was paying $177 to park my car there. Now it's $325, and they did that during the holiday season. So I take your comments about sky-high user fees very seriously. So my first question is, how much business do we lose to the United States because of the sky-high airport fees that we're paying in Canada?
Thank you for that question. There are a couple of airports that are very close to the US border in Buffalo and Bellingham, just to say two. And we estimate that about 7 million Canadians go across the border to fly from US airports close to the border to enjoy the lower fees and charges that those airports offer. So that's a border leakage that is actually detrimental to Canada, because those people actually they are just gone to the US, and they improve business in the US, and they are lost for Canada.
As an MP for Abbotsford, is it safe to say that there would be a positive economic impact in the Fraser Valley if the government of Canada reformed its user fee model and reduced its airport rents to encourage Canadians to use Canadian companies and Canadian airports?
100%. That's a correct assumption. There would be significantly more. By the way, it's also interesting that almost no low-cost carriers from the US fly into Canada, because they want to avoid the high cost in Canada and the high regulatory risk that comes from flying into Canada. By the way, we estimate that if the government and third-party imposed fees and charges would be half of what they are, which would be more in line with other countries, this would stimulate enough demand to fuel another airline of the size of WestJet. Or to reframe it the other way around, there are more than 10 million Canadians that are currently fenced off from using airplanes because of this high price hurdle that's imposed from third-party and government-controlled fees and charges. That's the reality in this country,
Okay,
and
so
that's what we collectively need to work on.
High taxes, high user fees has a negative impact on the airport sector in Canada, both in terms of passengers and the offshoots in our broader economy, where we do have those key airports like my community of Abbotsford.
Exactly, and it fences off low-income Canadians that cannot afford the ticket because this price is just too high.
Thank you. My second question to WestJet is regarding the carbon tax. When a future Conservative government axes the carbon tax, can WestJet assure that tickets will go down? The ticket costs will go down as a result?
Yes, we will. So far, though, the carbon tax is 10 million because it's only confined to intra-provincial flying. But what I said before, this is going up by more than tenfold over the years to come, with all the provincial, national, and international efforts to reduce carbon emission. This will become a very, very big burden for airlines and therefore for passengers if this trend continues. And
so I can safely say that to my constituents who fly regularly for business to Edmonton and Calgary from Abbotsford, that by axing the carbon tax, they will see a reduction in the cost they're paying on their airline ticket?
So between Abbotsford and Edmonton, there's no carbon tax because this is an inter-provincial
My
flight.
apologies. Thank you.
So,
Thank
but
you.
from Prince George to Vancouver, yes.
From Prince George to Vancouver. Okay, thank you so much. My third question relates to babies. I have a young daughter, I have a young son, and constituents in my riding want to make sure that baby bags are not subject to bag fees, as we have discussed earlier. A quick answer.
They are not subject to this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Viss. Next, we have Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the guests today that are answering our questions in regards to these fees that are being charged by WestJet and now, of course, proposed by Air Canada. But there's a couple of points I want to make, though. One is that since the COVID era, of course, WestJet has been noticeably absent from, and I discussed this with Mr. Gibbons a number of times, from regional rural airports, which is creating a real problem for travelers like me. For instance, the only way I can get into Gander and out of Gander is because of Air Canada and Provincial Airlines. And accessibility is a big problem. So our major concern is access to regional airports like Gander and others in rural Canada is a real challenge. I used to be a regular WestJet customer with the card that you talked about that gave me some benefits. I like the airline, enjoyed the service when I was able to access the service. But because of that, now, of course, I'm no longer a WestJet customer because I can't get to unless I drive a long distance to St. John's or somewhere else, fly to Halifax or somewhere to get to use the airline services. So my concern is how soon are you going to be able to move from this urban model of flying that you currently have and get back into these regional hubs, I call them, like Gander, for example, in the rural parts of Canada, because that's sadly missing. And these fees are not something I like, but that's a bigger concern right now.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So first of all, I won't dispute we do fly to many regional airports, and especially in Western Canada, and this is a big part of our strategy. But what I will say, though, is that especially those high fees and charges are burdening regional airports more than the big airports. Because those routes often are very, very marginal, and if then the prices go up and therefore less people fly, or it cannot be put on the ticket price, then those routes can easily go under. And by the way, APPR is also a big risk for regional flying, because if you have just one flight that becomes APPR eligible, this can easily eat off the entire profit for the year, so then you can equally just not fly.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say, I think it's a pity that you did not invite any of the CEOs of the northern regional airlines like Canadian North or any of those regional, because they actually have to deal with exactly this every single day.
I've got 5 minutes here, not a lot of time to ask many questions. But, when I see routes being cut out in parts of Canada that are important to me in my region, in my province, and fees going up, that leaves a very poor taste in my mouth. And I'm no different from whether airline it is. I say the same to Air Canada. Air Canada, to their credit, has maintained routes, either through Air Jazz or Provincial Airlines, to keep servicing Gander and some of these smaller regional airports. But the cost of doing that has gone through the roof. If you talk to people in Nappy Valley, Goose Bay, Labrador, and Wabush, flying interprovincial, it's enormous amounts of money to fly from these one location to the other, to the capital city of St. John's. So Air Canada, I ask you, why are you considering fees for baggages when you consider the cost that is added to people's flights?
Sorry, Mr. Rogers, Air Canada's in the second panel. They're not on this
Yes.
one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
that's okay. I just wanted to remind you of that.
Yeah.
They're on the second panel. So if you have a question
Yeah.
for Porter or
I'm-
WestJet or Air Transat.
What just can say to your regional concern, I think there are great examples around the world. The US has an essential air service program. Europe has a public service obligation program where that actually supports small regional flights. And I think Canada should actually look at those programs and consider whether this is something that Canada could also adapt for Canada. And I think Andy had one more
Yeah,
comment.
Mr. Rogers, I just want to touch on Newfoundland and Labrador because it was 2 years ago at this committee, you asked very point blank whether or not WestJet would leave that province. And what we said at the time was we had no intent to leave that province and we intended to grow. And since then, you've seen that we've addressed the biggest air access gap the province had, which was direct flights to Europe. And actually next summer, we have a daily flight to and from Europe to the province, which has been so incredibly well received. And even a small community like Sydney, Nova Scotia, we added a new flight
Thank you.
next summer. So we have a very strong growth story in Newfoundland and Labrador. I know that we are missed in
Thank
Gander.
you very much, Mr.
and
Gibbons.
we've
I'm going to have to
committed
cut you
working
off
with
there.
on that.
Unfortunately, I'm
Thank
trying
you.
to stick to everybody's
Yep.
time. Monsieur Barcelouval, à vous la parole. 2 minutes.
You have the floor, Mr. Barsalou-Duval, for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been listening to you since earlier, and I'm having a hard time following you. Someone who flies for 2, 3, up to 6 hours without any hand baggage, well, I think that's the exception and not the rule. You may contradict me, but I'd like to see what percentage of passengers don't take checked baggage or hand baggage. But you're talking about hand baggage, but before you didn't charge for checked baggage either. So when you add fees to these flights, you're talking about no checked baggage, no hand baggage. So consumers, when they choose their flight, that's not the real price that they're going to pay, and I think that's an issue. At the end of the day, they may travel with one company or another, but how do we ensure that all companies charge the same price for checked baggage and hand baggage? How can consumers navigate all of this?
So we had 1.2 million Canadians that did buy an ultra basic fare and did not bring a large carry-on bag and did not check a bag. So that's actually a significant number. It's about half of all the ultra basic passengers that we had. By the way, if someone has a WestJet credit card, they can buy an ultra basic fare and check a bag for free. So there are ways for, or if they have a loyalty status, they can do the same. So there are many ways that you can actually enjoy the low fare and you're able to do it. And with regard to prices, so obviously that's pricing how much a bag costs. So there can never be a uniform price among competitors because this is price competition that competitors will never talk about.
Merci. Donc vous me confirmez que justement c'est très difficile.
Thanks. So you're confirming that it is very difficult for consumers to compare airlines because when we compare air tickets and the fees, there are types of hidden fees that harm their choice when they need to make a choice. I think that's problematic.
Because people, it's very transparent. So people can look up the fees and people know it. So they don't blindly book something and then suddenly find out they have to pay something. They can see it as part of the booking process how much it would cost.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barsalou-Duval.
Ms. Dance, the floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've heard that the external fees, that if they were lowered, that it would cost less for travelers and they would be able to save money. But knowing that companies, like all of yours, have the financial responsibility to their stakeholders to make as much money as possible, what's the guarantee that even if we can manage to convince the government to lower these fees, that you just won't keep your prices at that same level or higher?
That's very easy. As I said before, we have been flying 5 million empty seats, and we would like to fill those seats. And the way to fill those seats is by having people flying that otherwise wouldn't be flying. And as I said before, if the fees and charges would be half of what they are today, this would allow us to offer tickets at an all-in ticket price that would get people off their couch to go into an airplane. because they then can afford it. So this would grow the pie. There would be more than 10 million additional people in Canada that would then be able to fly and that can't fly today. And that's our gain. So our gain is not to put the price up, but our gain is to stimulate new people that would otherwise not fly.
But don't you think more people would fly if it was more reasonably priced?
That's exactly what I'm saying, right? That's exactly what I'm saying. More people would fly if the minimum price that you can offer would be lower. So right now, you basically cannot offer a ticket price that's below $100. If you go to Europe, people fly for 39 euro or dollar or whatever you want to take it. Yeah. So that's because the taxes and fees that are being added to the ticket is much lower in Europe, and that's why Ryanair can actually do it. And they offer the cheapest prices, and they are the most profitable airline in Europe. I mean, if you just put these things together, it's pretty obvious where the problem sits.
Yeah, and I've flown Ryanair, and I was able, as a single mom, to hop around Europe with my son and be able to afford their $30 and $40 tickets, and it was extremely reasonable. And I think that's the problem. I would have loved to have traveled across Canada with my son, but those prices here are just far outpacing those things. And I don't always, and I get that you're talking about those external fees, but I think that a lot of it still is the individual fee that people are forced to pay when it comes down to all these things. And I mean, I booked a ticket with my son a few years ago, and we didn't make it to sit together. And I was like, what do you mean we don't get to sit together? And she was like, oh, well, it was the way it was booked because I paid for my ticket and used his for points. And they wanted to charge me to move him so that we could sit together. And I was shocked by it, trying to figure out a way to make that work. And my son was like, oh, I'll sit by myself. I was like, yeah, no, not going to happen. It's just one of those things. Like, I think that if we had, and we see it in the South, in the U.S., some of their seats as well. So I'm trying to put my head around this and wrap my head around it.
Just one comment.
Unfortunately, we don't have
families can sit together with no charge.
Thank you very much. Next, I will turn the floor over to Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Mr. von Hansbroek, if I can get it. Thank you. Did you have anything else? Did you just want to finish off the response to Ms. Dance? I'll let you do that. But if you're good, you're good.
No, I just want to say that we try to seat families together, and if for whatever reason they would not be seated together, they can change their seat with no cost.
The balance of my time I'll spend with you, Mr. Deleuze. We heard from WestJet that high fees and the carbon tax are preventing air passenger travel. My question is more with respect to competition. Porter's been able to do what many thought was impossible, which was to break in, just like WestJet, I guess, as well, into the air market. If in fact fees were decreased, if the carbon tax was removed and was more favorable, do you think that another Porter airline would have an easier route than you had?
Yes, absolutely. As highlighted by other members here today, the tax environment is very onerous on travelers in Canada. And with a lower tax regime, there'd be a significant increase in overall passenger traffic, which would make it easier for new competitors to enter the market. And carriers with different financial models, even those different than Porter, including ultra low-cost carriers, that really depend on low fares stimulating traffic.
Thank you, and thank you for traveling in, and we really appreciate it. And thank you for your testimony there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. And finally, for this first hour, we'll turn the floor over to Mr. Iachino. Mr. Iachino, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are addressed to all three airline companies. I would like short answers, yes, no, and a few words, please. To every airline, was your airline company bailed out during COVID? And by whom? Go ahead, WestJet.
No, we didn't receive any government money during COVID.
Air Transit?
Yes, we did receive money from the
By who?
government. By
Porter?
the federal government.
Porter?
Loans.
Yes, from the federal government through
WestJet.
loans.
Thank you. WestJet, your employees didn't get any money from the federal government?
We received the Canadian Emergency
Thank
Wage.
you.
We
You
received
did
the
receive
Canadian
money.
emergency
That's all I
response.
want to know. Yes
Yeah,
or no?
I'm answering
I
it
don't
as
want
you
anything else.
asked.
I want you to just give me a yes
Yeah.
or no. So do you truly believe that this is acceptable at a time when Canadians' pocketbooks are hurting and when they've been saving for their travels for you to react this way? When you were having a hard time, the government of Canada bailed you out financially. Is that correct to each airline? Directly or indirectly? Through you, directly through a company, or through your employees? Did the government of Canada bail you out when you were having a hard time?
Today that
Yes
we've
or no,
passed
please?
savings on to consumers, so I don't understand what
Thank
you're
you.
what you're asking.
Porter? Porter?
I'm not sure what the question is. Sorry, can you
When you were having a hard time, did the government of Canada bail you out?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we were recipients of a leaf loan.
Do you know, Porter? Thank you. Air Transit. What's your response?
We've received the leaf loan, just so that everybody understands as well. Other countries have received subsidies.
Okay. So you've all had good net profits, right? But do you know
No.
who
No.
financed?
No.
Do you know?
That,
Do you
that's
know
that's
who
that's not correct,
financed-
sir.
Excuse me.
That's not
Do
correct,
you know
sir.
who financed? Excuse me, I have a question to ask. Do you know who financed the government of Canada? Do you know? Do you know who finances the government of Canada? Does anybody know of the three companies that are here today? I guess you don't know, but let me tell you, it's the citizens, Canadians, yes, Canadian citizens, those same citizens that travel on your planes, those same citizens who today would need a little support, would need a little relief. So here you are imposing all these fees on Canadians. And if you don't remember, it was Canadians that bailed you out in hard times. Thank you very much for showing good support,
Like,
consideration towards Canadians.
yeah. So
Thank you very much, Mr.
unlike the
Iacono.
government,
Sorry,
airlines have been very
Mr. Chair,
successful
Mr.
in
Chair,
lowering fares.
point of order. Generally, you give the witness the same amount of time as you've spoken. Mr. Iacono took all the time. I think WestJet deserves 30 seconds to
I will
respond.
say this, Mr. Lawrence, members are free to ask questions or to make statements during their time. He's chosen to make
Point of
statements
order.
and ask questions.
Point
Got-
of order, Chair.
Colleagues, Mr. Iacono, I just want to say we are done with the first hour. We do have a
Point of
second
order,
panel
Mr. Chair.
here. I'll listen to your point of order, Mr. Iacono.
I did ask specific responses. It was a yes, no.
And I referenced that.
I'm
You did ask
content.
questions,
Thank you.
so you used a portion of your time for questions. You used a portion of your time for comments. You're allowed to do both, sir. With that, I want to thank all of the witnesses for appearing with us here in person or online and for sharing their testimony today. I will suspend the meeting for 2 minutes, colleagues, to welcome the next round of witnesses. The meeting is suspended. Back to order. Colleagues, appearing before us for the second hour, we have from Air Canada, Mr. Michael Rousseau, President and Chief Executive Officer, joining us by video conference. Welcome to you, sir. We have Mark Gallardo, Executive Vice President, Revenue and Network Planning, and President Cargo. Welcome. And we have David Rowe, Vice President, Government and Community Relations. We also have from Air Passenger Rights, Dr. Gabor Lukács, President. Welcome to you. Good to have you back, sir. We're beginning with our opening remarks, and for that, I'll turn the floor over to you, Monsieur Rousseau. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci et bonjour.
Thank you and good afternoon.
Following some recent changes made to Air Canada's fare structure, I'm accompanied by two members of Air Canada's executive team, Mark Gallardo, Air Canada's EVP, Revenue and Network Planning, and David Rowe, Air Canada's VP, Government Relations. Je suis désolé de ne pas.
I am sorry that I cannot speak French today. I am continuing my French courses.
On our recent changes, it is important to underline the context in which these changes were made. A context that is characterized by solid competition in the domestic market, which means lower prices, more choice for passengers, and increased pressure on carriers to compete more effectively. The changes we have announced here have and will continue to be communicated to our customers with the utmost transparency. The growth of airlines such as WestJet and Porter and the entry of Flair have profoundly changed the market dynamic. Over the last 10 years, the proportion of domestic routes where 3 carriers competed has more than tripled, reaching 54% in 2023, the same proportion as the United States. No doubt that this increased competition has driven airfares down. Since 2011, as an analysis by Intravista based on data from Sabre shows, the average fare in the domestic market has been reduced by about 20% in constant dollars. In the same period, the number of domestic passengers has increased by about 27%. More people travel, and people pay less for their ticket. As a reminder, the average domestic fare had already gone down about 35% in constant dollars between 1990 and 2001, according to Stats Canada. In this context, airlines must evolve their offerings to meet the changing need of passengers. Part of this evolution, which has benefited passengers, has been the unbundling of fares, which allows passengers to buy only the features that they are interested in. Today, Air Canada offers a range of fare options tailored to different preferences, including or not services such as checked baggage, ticket changes, refundability, and onboard meals. This provides customers the flexibility to choose the options most important to them while enabling Air Canada to compete effectively. Our recent change to Air Canada's lowest fare, the basic fare, which no longer includes carry-on baggage, represents another step in this direction. With online tools and price comparison platforms, shopping for fares has never been easier. Consumers can readily identify the lowest fares available. True competition requires companies to respond to market forces. This is exactly what we're doing. We are aligning our lowest fare policies with those already offered by our competitors, WestJet, Porter, and Flair, to be in a better position to compete for price-conscious customers. By doing this, Air Canada is ensuring consistency for consumers when comparing fares across airlines. It is important to note that all other Air Canada fare types continue to include free carry-on baggage. It is also included in all fare types, including basic, for other markets other than North America or the Sun. If this committee would like to continue the discussion around affordability, I encourage you to revisit your previous recommendations, which include a review of all costs imposed by the government on airports and airlines, and the reinvestment of all rents collected back into the airport infrastructure. Currently, taxes and government-imposed fees represent about 30% of the average domestic fare. If these fees were lowered, this would make a tangible difference for people traveling in Canada. In today's competitive environment, Air Canada must respond to real-time dynamics to remain a competitive option for travelers. Similar fare structures at other carriers have not raised concerns from Parliament. Travelers tend to prioritize the lowest advertised price, even if additional fees make the final cost higher, and small differences in pricing can determine whether we are considered at all. We will all probably agree that competition is the best way to ensure the best service and prices for Canadians. It does that by allowing customers to compare products and letting the market decide which will succeed and which are not wanted. To remain competitive, we must ensure our fares are comparable to those of our competitors, while offering travelers the flexibility to pay only for the services they value. Our goal is to provide affordable options without compromising on the quality of service, ensuring that Air Canada remains an accessible and competitive choice for Canadian travelers. We are available to take questions. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rousseau. Next, we'll go to Dr. Lukács. Dr. Lukács, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, honorable members, Air Passenger Rights is Canada's independent non-profit organization of volunteers devoted to empowering travelers. We speak for passengers whom we help daily in their struggle to enforce their rights. We take no government or business funding, and we have no business interest in the travel industry. Once upon a time, travel was simple. We bought a ticket, we were quoted and paid a price that covered all aspects of our trip. This commercial norm is codified in the Canada Transportation Act. Section 55 defines basic fare as one-way air transportation of an adult with reasonable baggage between 2 points in Canada. Section 86.1 requires the Canadian Transportation Agency to make regulations to enable passengers to readily determine the total amount to be paid for the air services they buy. You rightly wonder why, despite clear legislative language, Canadian passengers are facing a myriad of junk fees for services inherent to air travel. Seat selection fees, checked baggage fees, carry-on fees, and even a fee for checking in at the airport. Junk fees are deceptive marketing tactics that hinder readily determining how much passengers will end up paying. The airline's decision to charge junk fees is a rational act to maximize profits in the face of ill-advised regulatory policies. It is not the airlines, but Cabinet who are to blame for approving or failing to vary the agency's decisions and regulations that have eroded existing legal safeguards against junk fees. Make no mistake, the buck stops with Cabinet, not the agency. The agency requires Cabinet approval for any regulation that it makes. Under Section 36 of the Act, the agency cannot make regulations on its own. The agency requires, furthermore, Cabinet has the power to vary or rescind any decision or order or regulation made by the agency. And the source of that power is Section 40 of the Act. For example, Cabinet is empowered to revise the Air Passenger Protection Regulations, the APPR, on its own motion at any time and without waiting for the agency for years. When it comes to the erosion of existing safeguards against junk fees, there are two noteworthy landmarks. First, in 2012, Cabinet approved regulations requiring airlines to advertise the total price of air travel. Alas, they treated baggage fees as an optional incidental service. These provisions were initially in the air transportation regulations, but made their way into the APPR under the current government's watch. Then in 2019, the agency exempted ultra-low-cost carriers from complying with the basic fare requirements in the Act. This decision enabled some airlines to not offer any fares that include baggage. Cabinet did not step in to rescind or vary the agency's decision on these exemptions. The airlines did not break the law by introducing junk fees. Rather, Cabinet's poor judgment enabled the airlines to introduce junk fees and made junk fees so profitable. There is a simple way to end junk fees in air travel in Canada. The APPR's price advertising provisions should be varied to clarify that a personal item, a standard carry-on, the first piece of checked baggage, and checking in at the airport are not optional incidental services. Any charges for these services must be included in the total price being advertised and quoted. Doing so would also foster fair competition by making it easier for passengers to compare fares offered by different airlines. Airlines would still be at liberty to offer a discount to passengers who make an informed decision to not use some services. We ask you to urge Cabinet to promptly exercise the powers conferred upon them in Section 40 of the Act by varying the APPR's price advertising provisions to end junk fees for Canadian passengers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lukács. We'll begin our line of questioning today with Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my questions will all be directed towards you, Mr. Rousseau. I just want to, first of all, level set and make sure that Canadians are aware of the actions that Air Canada has taken. And it's my understanding that on December 4th, you announced that your basic fare would no longer include carry-on luggage. Is that correct? Starting January 3rd.
Thank you for the question. That is correct for just the North American sun markets.
Thank you for that. And that if someone wanted to have a carry-on, they could either upgrade to a higher fare or they could pay a $35 fee. Is that correct as well?
Well, pay a $35 fee to check it in. Yes, that's correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. And so I understand, and your predecessors here at WestJet made an excellent point of debundling the various elements, and that makes sense to me. But here's my fear: is that instead of those dollars going back to those folks who want to travel without a carry-on, that it will just go to Air Canada's bottom line. So I'm hoping you could assure Canadians and assure the Transport Committee members that the difference or that delta, that $35 difference in fee, will result in your fees dropping on your basic tickets to North American and Sun destinations by $35 on average. And if not, why not?
Again, thank you for the question. That's going to be a function of the competitive marketplace that we operate in. As I mentioned in my opening comments, we have three very good competitors in Flair, WestJet, and Porter. And so the basic fares are typically, now that they're completely comparable, they'll be also priced probably comparably as well. And again, we'll see how the market reacts with 4 competitors offering the same product in a very transparent fashion. And I cannot put forward any type of potential price changes because that's against the law for me to do that, frankly. But the market will determine that, and now the market is more competitive.
But clearly, you have done internal work which would show the revenue that will be generated by charging basic ticket fares, $35 to check a carry-on item. I would remind you, sir, that this is not just a kangaroo court. This is Parliament here, and we have the ability to compel any document that we require. So I would ask you again, what will be the revenue generated? You've done these calculations. What will be the revenue generated by the carry-on fee?
I don't have, thank you again for the question. I don't have that information. I can certainly refer it to Mark Gallardo, our EVP of Network and Revenue Management, and to provide a little more detail. But certainly, some of the information that you may ask for will be confidential, commercially sensitive. But we are certainly willing to work with the committee to provide the information, if not today, if it's not commercially sensitive, certainly shortly after the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate that. And this committee does have the ability to keep information confidential if it so deems to. So that might be a solution, but would definitely like that. And then I'd like to just sort of flip back to the pricing again. I know as well that as a major corporation, $1 billion corporation, you would have done pricing analysis, economic analysis as to what the introduction of a carry-on fee would do to pricing. And I don't think you just wake up in the morning and say, this is the price of the flight from Vancouver to Winnipeg. So what WestJet told us that the difference between their ultra basic and their basic was 14%. What will be the difference between the flight costs on average on January 2nd and January 3rd?
Again, thank you for the question. It's going to be a function of the competitive forces, but possibly Mark Gallardo can provide a little more detail on that type of question, if I can defer that to him.
Sure. The work that we did is to assess how to make sure that Air Canada is very competitive in the domestic market. And our view was that offering this product would make Air Canada competitive and therefore would, obviously help its revenue streams in being competitive. That's the assessment that we did, and we deemed that being uncompetitive was not a good outcome for Air Canada.
So Mr. Gallardo, I think you may have given away the plot a little bit there. You just said that the reason why you put in a fee or removed carry-on baggage as part of a basic fare was to increase revenue. That's the why you've done this?
I said we did that to remain competitive with changing market forces in domestic Canada.
I think if we check the answer, it might say a little bit different than that, but that's fine. I would then ask for unanimous consent for a motion asking Air Canada for documents with respect to the revenue increase from the removal of carry-on items from their basic fare, as well as their pricing as the impact on pricing. Do I have UC for that, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. We're going to stop the time there. Yes, Mr. Badaway.
If he's going to ask for that from Air Canada, he asks for that for all the carriers.
So I don't have UC then?
Not for that one, but if you include all the air carriers, you can have all the UC you want.
Sure. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to ask for all documentation relating to the revenues generated from the payment of carry-on baggage or the projected income that Air Canada has calculated. Do I have unanimous consent? Seeing no objection, so carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Your time is up. Thank you. Next, we will go to Mr. Vancouverton online. Mr. Vancouverton, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to address Transport Committee today. My questions will be for the CEO of Air Canada, Mr. Russo. Mr. Russo, thank you for coming to committee today. I understand that in 2023, Air Canada reported a profit of $2.28 billion, which was a 32% increase from 2022. Is that more or less correct?
I believe that's correct. Two totally different years. One just after the pandemic.
Of course. Congratulations on the profits. I understand that your executive compensation was over $12 million last year. Is that correct?
Again, thank you for the question. That is public record that my compensation in both variable and fixed, primarily variable, was roughly $12 million.
Did that include your bonus?
That included my bonus.
Okay. So quick math tells me that in the first week of January in 2024, you'll earn more than the average Canadian will in all of 2024. And considering the current cost of living crisis that Canadians are experiencing and the necessity of air travel in Canada, do you think that that's fair?
Again, thank you for the question. That's a difficult question to answer from a personal perspective. I'm paid a competitive rate versus other CEOs that have similar roles and responsibilities.
Okay. So Air Canada recently announced that you'll be charging for carry-on baggage. I take an Air Canada flight almost every week to work, and I'm lucky to be able to leave some things in Ottawa. But a lot of Canadians, travel on the weekend or for work for other reasons and not as frequently, and they might have to travel with more. So can you explain to Canadians why you'll be charging them for carry-on baggage that requires no handling by baggage carriers that would just go in an overhead compartment?
Again, thank you for the question. Well, first of all, that change is only on our basic fare. So we have 7 different fare structures. So it's only on the basic fare. And there are many other commercial decisions we make that benefit customers. For example, just yesterday, we are now going to be offering free Wi-Fi for all Aeroplan members.
Those are for frequent flyers, correct?
Yeah, for Aeroplan members, it's 9 million Aeroplan members. You can join Aeroplan for nothing, and if you're an Aeroplan member, you've got free Wi-Fi in our planes.
Okay.
And there's other examples throughout the year that we provided significant value benefits to all of our passengers.
Okay, I'm a passenger on Air Canada frequently, and I can attest to the experience being a good one generally. But I also know that it's very expensive to travel on Air Canada. Would you say that Canada is a high competition market for air travel?
Again, thank you for the question. All the stats indicate that it is one of the most competitive markets compared to Australia, Europe, and United States.
Compared to Europe, how many options do I have if I would like to fly from Toronto to Ottawa in terms of airlines?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the answer to that question.
Would it be more than 5?
But I do know that 54% of all routes in Canada have at least 3 carriers on them. That's the same percentage as the United States.
Okay. I prior to being an MP, I was an athlete. I traveled a lot in Europe, and I can attest to the fact that there was quite a few more airline options when traveling in Europe and in the United States. Canada's different in that regard. Now, will this $35 charge apply to like a really large backpack if somebody's going on a hiking trip?
Again, I think that will be up to the gate agent to make that decision. But I think we have specifications as to size.
Right. And so let me put it this way then. So I say I'm planning on taking a trip and I'd like to do some hiking. So I bring some shoes and whatever, and I plan on putting it underneath the seat. So I plan on bringing it on as my personal item, experiencing no cost associated with that. But I arrive and I check in, and the gate agent says, actually, it's too big to go under your seat, even though, I could probably get it in there. So they're telling me that it's actually a carry-on baggage. What will I be charged at the airport to put it in the overhead compartment?
Well, we believe, thank you for the question. We believe our gate agents will be reasonable in the circumstances.
Do you know the amount that it'll cost, though?
I believe at gate it will be $65.
$65. And so with this additional fee that you'll be charging Canadian passengers from anywhere, really, you expect increased revenues in surplus of your over $2 billion profits?
Well, we also invest in a tremendous amount of money. All the profits we make, we reinvest. We reinvest in airplanes, flying Canadians all around the world, and other opportunities and benefits for consumers as well.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that, and like I said, I think the flying experience on Air Canada is good. But my question is, will this increase your revenues next year? Will this fee? increase the amount of money that Air Canada makes?
Again, thank you for the question. To the earlier question, we will provide a financial analysis to the committee, which will detail that.
No, thank you. And do you expect to be compensated more in 2024 than you were in 2023? You generally make more year over year?
No, that's not the case because the vast majority of my pay is variable pay. So it depends how we do year over year, and that's going to be subject to the board of directors' approval.
Fair to say, though, if this fee increases the overall revenues of Air Canada, you increase your bottom line revenues, which are currently in excess of $2 billion, you will receive additional pay? It's possible,
again, this is all outlined in the proxy as to how I'm compensated, but my bonus is based on how well we do versus our plan, not how well we do versus last year.
No, I get it. So my next question is about other people at Air Canada. We understand that you're compensated very well. We appreciate that it's a competitive corporate market. We, want talented people to be running airlines. I understand that a lot of the folks on board that serve us drinks and keep us safe, make sure that we've got what we need in flight, they're not paid for when they're at the airport if they're not on the plane. Is that correct? In-flight attendants, pilots?
Again, thank you for the question. They're paid based on our contract that we have with either CUPE or ALPA, who represent the flight attendants and our pilots respectively.
Yeah, so I'm a member of Parliament for Milton, so I have a lot of pilots and in-flight staff in my community, and I understand that if they're delayed, if they're sitting in the airport, then they're not paid for those hours worked. Is that correct?
Again, it's all a function of the
just yes or no. Are they paid when they're not flying?
I'd have to go back to the contracts and determine that basically, under what circumstances.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rousseau, and thank you, Mr. Van Couverton. Prochainement, nous avons Mr. Barcelou-Duval. À vous la parole, 6 minutes.
Next, Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lukacs, Mr. Rousseau, Mr. Rowe, and Mr. Gallardo for joining us today. I would like to start by making a comment about your opening comments, Mr. Rousseau, about your French. I must say that 3 years ago, I was among those who were shocked when you said that you were proud to not speak French, even though you lived in Montreal. And to see today that you're still unable to say more than a single phrase in English makes me question whether your commitment to learning French is truly serious or not. And I don't want to be disrespectful. I think everyone deserves respect, but I think that it's a two-way street. And Air Canada is a big company based in Montreal and Quebec, and I think that we could expect from you to learn French. And I hope that you're serious in that undertaking.
Merci.
Thank you for your question.
I am serious about learning French. It's certainly taking me longer than I thought, but I'm continuing down that road.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to the topic of the day, but I'm not necessarily convinced by your answer, and I hope that next time we see you at committee, you'll be able to hold a conversation in French, or at least that may happen one day. My first question that I have for you, you are perhaps aware that Air Canada is increasing its fees, of imposing $35 fees for hand baggage, and it has triggered a lot of indignation in Quebec, and the newspapers are quite unanimous. The people are angry. I think that's clear. Does that indignation could bring you to reconsider this decision on baggage fees?
Again, merci.
Thank you for your question.
We're always open to modifying something based on market conditions. That's the definition of a good company. As we said earlier, we made this change to align ourselves with our three principal competitors. If something should change in the future, we would obviously consider any type of change that makes sense.
OK. En tout cas, je sais qu'il y a beaucoup.
Okay, well, I know there's a lot of people hoping for that, and I'm among them. Air Canada, in Canada, I think it's the #1 company, if I'm not mistaken. You hold about 50% of the domestic market in Canada, in Montreal. In any case, I know that it's even more than that. Roughly 47%. We're pretty close to 50%. But the question that I would like to ask you, nobody is contesting the fact that Air Canada is #1. It is the biggest air carrier in Canada, and the leader generally sets an example. But in this case, we see that Air Canada is bottoming out a little bit. How do you feel about reducing services to your clients?
Merci pour votre.
Thank you for your question.
Overall, we believe we're improving services to our client. I mean, this is one example of a commercial decision. As I mentioned earlier, we make thousands of commercial decisions that benefit consumers, including the one yesterday regarding Wi-Fi, including the one earlier this year providing beer and wine to our economy customers, and a better snack. So there are many decisions that we make from a commercial perspective with the intent overall of improving the value proposition for customers, and obviously to winning market share and winning loyalty of the Canadian consumer.
Okay. Vous nous dites que vous essayez
Because you're telling us that you're trying to improve and offer more value to consumers, but you refused to commit to reducing the average price of tickets by $35 for the same service you're offering now. So we can expect that there will be price increases and not price drops for consumers who would like to have the same service.
Missy, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not allowed to signal any type of price changes in an open forum. That's against the law in Canada. So the question, I cannot respond to your question other than to say the market forces will determine the pricing on all different fare structures as we go forward.
OK. Peut-être si on veut parler des forces.
Okay, if we want to talk about market forces, will market forces in the future ensure that the ultra basic price, which doesn't include carry-on baggage, if we decide to add baggage, for example, a cabin baggage, will mean that the market price will mean that it becomes less expensive or more expensive than the price paid with other levels that include baggage?
Missy, I don't
Thank you.
understand your question. Again, this fare structure aligns with the competition. Our basic fare structure now, the attributes align with our three primary competitors. As I said earlier, having 4 competitors offer the same product in a very transparent fashion should be good for competition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russo. Merci, Mr. Barcel-Duval. Next,
Thank you, Mr. Barcel-Duval.
please.
Thank you very much. So I just, again, want to thank all the witnesses for coming in today. It's really important that as members of Parliament, we have stuff that we can bring back to our constituents. So I'm just going to first start off with Air Canada, and I'm just going to ask some quick questions just to kind of compare those numbers that we heard from WestJet and the other providers in the earlier session. So can you just tell us roughly what percentage of your profits come from these auxiliary fees and such, and how do you make those fees each year? Like what falls under that category? Mr. Russo?
Again, thank you for the question. We don't look at it that way. We look at our total revenues and we look at our total costs to determine what our net profit is. In light of the competitive environment. And because again, all our prices are fully transparent in many different distribution channels. So it's impossible for me to answer that question.
Okay, that's fair. I just know the other airlines were able to. And I do have some of your fees in here. Check bag, $35 to $42. For advanced seating, $15 to $80. Meals and beverages, earphones, $3 to $21. Pets and cabins, $50 to $120. Pets and baggage, $105 to $270. And it kind of goes on and on here. I won't keep going. But we were told, and again, correct me if you feel it's differently, that these add-ons is where airlines are making the most of their money. So if that's the case, how do you feel when knowing that those add-ons, as much as they are, we see those as profit as a consumer, and that it's hurting customers and making it harder for Canadians to travel annually?
Thank you for the question. Again, we look at the overall cost to the consumer when we obviously generate our revenue, and although we have the visibility on the fees that you mentioned, it's all part of an overall delivery of a product to the customer, and that we hopefully is competitive. It has to be competitive for us to stay in business.
That's fair. And I know that we heard from the other airlines, specifically about the external fees. So my colleague mentioned some of the other fees that come along with that: air security or air travel security, the airport improvement fees, and the other airlines suggested that maybe if we lowered those fees, if the government was able to lower those fees, that it would save travelers money. But we also know that companies like yours are responsible to their stakeholders and showing that they're making money. So what is the guarantee that if we can manage to get the government to lower some of those access fees, external fees, that we will see that savings being passed on to the consumer?
Again, thank you for the question. And again, I want to just reiterate something I said in my opening comments, that the average fare in Canada has dropped by 50% since 1990. And so there has been, again, a function of competition, a function of investment in better planes. And so Canadians have seen price declines on the constant dollars, inflation adjusted. However, to your point, Canada has a very unique model here, user pay model, which doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And it does cause higher prices for passengers to pay. We talked about this for decades, and unfortunately, it hasn't changed. And I would probably, I don't know what my competitor said in the earlier hour, but I certainly, if rates did come down, some of these fees did come down, then that should generate more traffic, and filling more seats on a plane is good for everybody, for consumers and for Air Canada, because it should lower the price.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, WestJet mentioned about filling 5 million empty seats on their carriers and such, and I can only think that even if we dropped everybody's fee just a little bit and had a bunch of people purchasing seats, that there would still be a huge profit. And I'll be honest, before my colleague mentioned the number in the billions, I had no idea. So I just think that there's got to be a better way to lower prices so that more Canadians can travel, which will, in theory, still continue to make the airlines billions of dollars with a B.
Yeah, billions of dollars, which we reinvest in new planes to take Canadians around the world and to be more efficient from a carbon emission perspective, and for a lot of good reasons.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dance. Next, we'll go to Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, please. Oh, Dr. Lewis, I believe you're on mute. I'll restart your clock when you're ready.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. And I just want to thank the witnesses, and also to inform you, Chair, that I would like to give a minute of my time to my colleague, Mr. Lawrence. My question is going to be for the CEO of Air Canada, Mr. Rousseau. Mr. Rousseau, we know that government regulations, fees, and taxes overall in Canada carry a big weight on the airlines' operations in Canada. This is one of the reasons why it's more expensive to fly in Canada than other countries. And we heard this during our study of airline competition, and we also heard that here today. Would you agree that when governments dump higher taxes and fees onto airlines, that has a consequence of raising the prices of tickets on the average traveler?
Thank you for your question. I absolutely agree with that statement. It also potentially provides barriers to entry for new entrants.
And we also heard today that this government's airline taxes, rents, and fees are actually out of control. And we heard evidence that it's 30% of the actual domestic fare is on government fees. Isn't it true that other countries avoid flying through Canada just to avoid the high, out of control government fees?
Thank you for the question. That may be true. I don't have evidence of that, but that would be a logical conclusion to the high cost structure we have here in Canada.
We heard that here today, but thank you for giving that forthright answer. So if we look at this government's taxes and fees and regulations, like the carbon tax, it's clear that this is largely responsible for why Canadians pay more to travel than in other countries to travel in Canada.
Again, thank you for the question. It's a combination of factors. It's one, our business model is a user pay model, as I mentioned before. So, for example, airports have to charge customers a AIF to build a capital fund to build infrastructure. In other countries, that's funded differently. So there's a combination of taxes from the government of Canada and from the fact that we have a unique model here, a user pay model.
How much carbon taxes does Air Canada pay in 2024?
Thank you for the question. That's a very good question. I wish I had the answer, but I can certainly provide it post this meeting.
Okay. We heard from WestJet that they paid $10 million, and we heard that they'll likely pay in excess of $100 million by 2028. Can you give us an idea of what the impact of, say, for example, and you're a much larger airline than WestJet, is that not correct?
Yes, WestJet's not public, so I don't have their information, but before in 2019, we were roughly 3.5 times their size.
Okay. So could you explain what, if WestJet is potentially paying in excess of $100 million by 2028, I would assume that yours would be around $300 million. Can you explain what a carbon tax cost of that would have, the impact that would have on the cost of flights for average Canadians?
Well, again, thank you for the question. And we fly roughly 50 million customers a year. And so that would increase the cost by roughly $6 or $7.
Okay, so essentially the increase in the carbon tax would be passed on to customers who would pay higher fares.
I mean, that would be that would be a logical assumption to make.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. It's 4 minutes in. I'll now pass the floor to Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I'd like to move a motion that at the conclusion of the meetings of Air Canada's plan to impose carry-on baggage fees, that the committee expand the study by an additional 3 meetings with a focus on how government policy has increased the cost of air travel, and produce a final report for the study that includes proposed areas where these fees can be reduced with the intention of lowering costs Canadians pay for airfare. Sub B, report to the House its recommendations that the government undertake a review of all federal fees, taxes, and charges applied to airlines and airports, and that the review include proposed areas where the fees can be reduced with the intention of lowering costs Canadians pay for airfare within 30 days, and that clause of the motion be reported to the House at the earliest opportunity following the adoption of this motion. We have it translated, and it should be arriving in your email.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Vancouver then on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have a speaking list already for this motion? Can I be on it if not?
We do not, Mr. Vancouverdin, but what we are going to do is probably suspend to ensure that we can all get a copy of this, and then members can determine how we'd like to proceed.
Can I speak before we do that?
I'm gonna let Mr. Lawrence finish,
Yeah,
and then from there, I'll turn the floor to Mr. Badaway, who had his hand up first. And then if it's
Okay.
the will of the committee, I think we'll probably suspend so that we can discuss this offline, and then come back and see if we'd like to handle this today or whether we want to handle this perhaps at another date. So I'll let you finish, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you. As this is in keeping with our study today, and I think we've heard some compelling evidence. But as actually, if I'm not telling tales out of school, myself and Mr. Badaway were discussing the issues and the need to sort of dig down deeper. And I think the additional 3 meetings would give us the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, with
Yes,
all due
Mr.
respect,
Badaway.
with all due respect to the time that we have left with the witnesses, which are very valuable, and it was asked by Mr. Lawrence in the first place, if we can actually have this in writing and deal with it in the next meeting. I know some of the questions that I have are going to drive towards this. So I would ask Mr. Lawrence if we can have this, we can deal with it at the next meeting under a UC motion.
Mr. Badaway, it is in writing and it is of course translated, so it is available for you to review. If we want 2 minutes, we would like to have a vote today. If you have the votes to adjourn it, you have the votes to adjourn it for another day. That's fine, but we would like to have this vote and dealt with today.
Okay, colleagues, what
Mr.
we'll
Chair,
do is...
prior to suspending,
Yes, Mr. Vancouverdin.
prior to suspending, I think it's very important that we complete this meeting. I have questions for the witnesses, and I would move to adjourn debate on this for now and come back to it at another date. Dilatory motion, I believe.
Okay, so we'll go to a vote. Madam Clerk. The motion is to adjourn debate.
Mr. Badaway,
Yes.
Mr. Vancouverdin,
Yes.
Ms. Koutrakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Iacono,
Oh, yes, en micro.
Mr. Iacono, may I get your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
No.
Dr. Lewis,
No.
Mr. Muse,
No.
Mr. Viss. Mr. Viss, could you hear us? You can do a sign of thumbs up or thumbs down for telling which vote you're doing.
I hope you can hear it. I don't know if you can.
Mr. Viss, could you hear us?
Oh, come on.
Monsieur Barcelo-Duval?
Oui.
Ms. Dance? Yes. 7 yeas, 3 nays.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I believe that was the end of the time that you had, Mr. Lawrence. So I'll turn the floor now over to Mr. Badaway. You have the floor, sir. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to start off by saying this, and it's not indifferent to what I was saying to the witnesses earlier in the earlier panel, is that this is all about affordability. And that means adjusting your discretionary costs, and I say discretionary costs, accordingly in the best interests of the customer. And I'll take the business side first. One of the things that I'm interested in, and it goes to Mr. Lawrence's motion, is looking at your balance sheets, looking at the costs, the revenues, your debt to operating, your capital, your operating sides of the balance sheet, your net margins on auxiliary fees, and things of that nature. I find it really hard to believe that when we're looking at affordability, that a CEO can earn $12 million in a year, but yet wants to collect auxiliary fees off the customers. That doesn't even come close to that, again, as a discretionary cost. With all the costs imposed by the government, it comes in a form of one or two ways. Either it comes in a form of user fees to the Canadian taxpayers, or it comes as a direct fee to the sector. So I want to repeat myself. Those fees either are subsidized by the Canadian taxpayer, or they come in a form of user fees by the airline sector. It's that simple. When we talk about debundling, easy word to say, debundling, it simply identifies the expenses. And with that, the question is, who pays for those expenses? Are they paid for by user fees, or are they paid for by subsidies by Canadians? Now I'll inject the parliamentary theatrics into the discussion, the politics, as was outlined by our Conservative colleagues. Their narrative today, and it was outlined by one of the members, is that either it's fees or it's the carbon tax. So let's dig a bit deeper on that. Fees. Okay, once again, and I apologize for being repetitive, but I want you to understand this. Fees are the cost of doing business within your sector. That's the business you're in. Or the carbon tax. Costs related to climate change. Once again, we go back to the premise. The premise is those fees within your sector are paid for through user fees, or they're subsidized by Canadian taxpayers. Carbon tax. Either those fees are paid for by the polluters, or they're subsidized by the Canadian taxpayer. Once again, who pays? And quite frankly, isn't that what this discussion is all about today? Who pays? Subsidy by the Canadian taxpayer or user fees? So we can have many meetings coming up speaking about all the auxiliary fees, all the operating, all the capital, your debt, operating, all that. It all boils down to one thing. Who pays? What's non-discretionary? What's discretionary? So my question, number one, and it goes to Mr. Lawrence's motion. Are we able to sit down? It was a question I asked the CEO from WestJet. Do you really want to deal with this? Then let's deal with it. Let's sit down and see those balance sheets, see the revenues, the net revenues that the net profits that you're making. Let's take a look at it. And let's make decisions based on those discretionary costs and decisions versus the non-discretionary, and come up with some new solutions with respect to the user fee structure versus the subsidized structure. Is Air Canada willing to do that, Mr. Rousseau?
Sorry, Mr. Rousseau. I'm going to add 10 seconds on to Mr. Badaway's time here, but I believe you're on mute. And I think all the members would like to hear the response.
Sorry about that. I just saw that. Again, thank you for the question. I need to think about that for a while. We're a public company. All our numbers, our balance sheet, our P&L are all public information, so you can see what we make and what we invest in. And as I said earlier, we typically invest all our profits into technology or better planes or something beneficial to the consumer.
So I'm assuming the answer is yes?
Well, I'd like to understand better the scope of what you're suggesting. And the debate on our model here in Canada on a user pay model versus a subsidized model, which the U.S. has for the most part, much closer to the U.S. model. That debate's been going on for some time. And I think we all understand the pros and cons of each one. I'm certainly willing and able to continue that debate as we go forward.
That's the crux, Mr. Chair. That's the crux of today's discussion. We can talk about the politics, we can talk about the parliamentary theatrics that has been going on for the last 2 hours, but the bottom line is affordability, and then based on that, is it a subsidy from the Canadian taxpayer, or is it a user fee? So if we want to get to the bottom line, if we want to get to that, then I believe that discussion, I'm talking. Just to get to that, I'm talking. Shut your mic off. To get to that point, that discussion has to happen. So again, the question I had for WestJet was to in fact ask for those so that we can get to those conclusions. And again, it goes to Mr. Lawrence's motion, because if we don't get to those conclusions, Mr. Lawrence's motion is useless. And I'm asking Air Canada for the same thing. So if you really want to have a discussion, then let's have it.
Thank you, Mr. Badaway. I have a point of order that I have to address with Mr. Lawrence.
I understand we get passionate, and I know Mr. Badaway to be an honorable member, but telling a witness to quote unquote shut his mic, I don't think is appropriate.
Not appropriate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. I'll ask all members to ensure that they direct any questions through the chair, and I'll make sure that any actions that are required are indeed put in place. I have Dr. Lewis's hand up. Is that still something you'd like to discuss, Dr. Lewis? Is that addressed by your colleague, Mr. Lawrence?
Thank you. It was addressed by my colleague, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis.
The inappropriateness of speaking to witnesses who come here and give their time, I think it's highly inappropriate to treat witnesses like that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. I'll now turn the floor over to Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Mr. Barcelou-Duval, à vous la parole. 2 minutes et demie, s'il vous plaît.
You have 2.5 minutes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think with everything that's been said today, it's clear that the reason evoked by Air Canada is competitiveness. They say we need this to be competitive. And from my perspective, I think I've already expressed my disagreement. Air Canada should be a leader and it should be setting the tone of the industry. And it should be aiming high instead of low. We're talking about $2.28 billion for 2023 in business activity and $1 billion in the last quarter. I think you would have a hard time. I would like to table a motion for unanimous consent as follows: that Air Canada inform the committee of the number of hours that Michael Rousseau has spent learning French since 2021, with a breakdown by month, week, and year. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Barcelou-Duval.
Heard the terms of this. Yes, I see your hand up, Mr. Van Couverden. Is that correct? You have your hand up, sir?
If you were commencing, est-ce que si vous êtes
Are you asking for a list, for the speaking list? Yes, I'm starting speaking list. You have the floor, Mr. Van Couverden.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Currently, I have the same question for Mr. Rousseau, because when I started learning this job 5 years ago, my French was also very limited, and I got to work, and I'm proud of my progress. But I have a lot of work to do still. But it's important in Canada to work in both official languages. And my question for Mr. Rousseau is, how many French lessons are you taking each week to learn French? And I support the motion by Mr. Barcelou-Duval. I commend Mr. Rousseau on his progress, but I would like you to encourage to keep up the work.
Van Couverden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Couverden. Questions and comments?
Do I have unanimous consent to adopt the motion put forward by Mr. Barcelou-Duval? I do. Merci beaucoup, Mr. Barcelou-Duval. So adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Next, we have Ms. Dance.
The floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes to end us off today.
3.
Oh, you're right. Excuse me. 3 minutes, 30 seconds added on from your previous time.
Thank you. Sorry. Dr. Lukash, you've been sitting here the whole time very patiently, not saying anything. You've been in the gallery listening throughout all of the major airlines talking. I just want to know what your thoughts are on the numbers that they gave and the effect that it'll have on passengers. And more so, what are your thoughts on the claims that are being made by the airline about how that these things will lead to lower costs for passengers? So I have 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, so go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I feel that perhaps two different questions got entangled here today. One question is about price transparency. When an average consumer, or even a naive consumer, goes online to shop for their ticket, how easy will they know how much they are going to be able to travel for? What will be the total at the end? And all these add-on junk fees actually get in the way of knowing what the price is to be paid at the end of the day. Airlines could still give passengers discounts for not having a carry-on or baggage, and I have no issue with that. It's just about how the information is presented to the consumers that I am concerned about from a passenger rights perspective. The second question is a question of how air travel in Canada is funded. It's an important question, but it feels that perhaps we are digressing from why this committee convened today's meeting. In terms of the funding model, certainly there would be a lot to do to look at how airports are being funded. The airport improvement fee is a question. There's no oversight over how the airports operate. There's long history of how those powers were transferred from the government to the airports, and it's a way of evading responsibility to the public. Having said that, I also agree with those who question where's the money going to come from eventually. Somebody has to pay for it. There's no free lunch. For those airline executives who claim that some of those fees should be lowered from the government, what they call government taxes, I want to hear personally as a passenger, who is going to pay for it? I have a neighbor in Halifax who told me he hasn't flown for 30 years for various personal reasons. Why should he be subsidizing my air travel? How can we do it fairly? These are all important questions. But from a passenger perspective, the immediate question is, how is it possible in 2024 that even though there are laws talking about price transparency, there are regulations, still such junk fees exist? And that is a problem that the government could and should address very quickly. They could do it with a stroke of a pen as a form of a governing council order. And I urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dance, and thank you very much, Dr. Lukács. Colleagues, if you'll permit, I have one question that I'd like to ask that I actually received via social media, because I've been live streaming this on my social media platforms. And the question that I was asked that I'd like to pass along to you, Mr. Rousseau, and the team from Air Canada: we all want to see a flourishing air sector in Canada. We all want to ensure that there's competition. Competition drives down price, in theory. The question that was asked that I just received on Facebook was, there are certain routes where Air Canada is the only provider. The people who use those routes, Montreal, St. John, for example, there's a couple of them across the country, have no choice and there is no competition. So in theory, this fee would be detrimental to them because they'd have to absorb the cost because there's no other alternative. Has Air Canada given any thought to perhaps in the routes where there is no competition, removing this increase to ensure that there's no rural-urban divide that exists in a great deal in this country? The question is posed to you, Mr. Rousseau, or anybody here that's joining us in person.
Thank you for the question. We'll give that consideration. We hadn't thought about that. But please understand, we may be on a route by ourselves, but any other airline can join and be a competitor on that route. They choose not to. Air Canada provides more regional service than any other airline in Canada, and we're not scared of competition. So if our competitors want to come on those routes, I know there's space available at the regional airports. They can do that. They chose not to do that, basically.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rousseau, and we do look forward to hearing back on you on considering that, and we'd share that perhaps included in our report. With that, I want to thank all the witnesses for joining us today, Dr. Lukács, representatives from Air Canada, for contributing to this very important study for Canadians. I want to wish everyone a happy holidays if we don't see you, and of course, I want to say a special thank you to our clerk. It is her last meeting as the clerk of our TRAN committee, so thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We wish you all the best in your next challenges. With that, safe travels, anyone. This meeting is adjourned.
you.